You know what? I used to think I was hot stuff, top enforcer for the Galactic Compliance Authority, 3 tours of duty across 17 different star systems, and a reputation that made lesser species wet themselves at the mere mention of my name. Vrex'thul the Bone Crusher. They called me. Pretty intimidating, right? Wrong, dead wrong. And I learned that lesson the hard way on a backwater mud ball called Earth. The assignment seemed routine enough. Some upstart species had been flagged for aggressive expansion tendencies and needed a stern talking to. Standard protocol: show up, flex a little muscle, deliver the usual play nice or else speech, and collect my paycheck. Easy money, or so I thought. The intel briefing was laughably sparse. Humans, they said. Recently discovered faster than light travel. Bipedal mammals. Average height 5 to 6 feet. Fragile bone structure. No natural weapons. No significant military technology. The risk assessment? Green across the board. They might as well have sent a vacation brochure. I should have known something was off when they assigned me to work with Zar, that nervous little Zilani pencil pusher from the diplomatic corps. The guy practically vibrated with anxiety on a good day. And this was supposed to be a routine intimidation run. But orders were orders. And I had a reputation to maintain. The journey to Sol system took 3 standard cycles, during which Zar spent most of his time reviewing and re-reviewing the contact protocols. Remember, Vrex'thul. He kept saying in that squeaky voice of his, "We're here to establish dominance through measured aggression." Nothing too extreme. Just enough to make them comply. I grunted my acknowledgement while polishing my ceremonial war clubs. Measured aggression? Please. These soft little mammals would take one look at my 8-foot frame, my razor-sharp claws, and my collection of trophies from previous negotiations, and they'd roll over faster than a Quellian slug in salt water. The human homeworld was disappointing. No orbital defense platforms, no massive fleet arrays, just a few primitive satellites and what looked like tin cans with rockets strapped to them. Their largest city barely registered on our sensors as anything more than a moderate heat signature. This was going to be even easier than I'd thought. We made planetfall in what the humans called New York, though why they bothered naming such a pathetic collection of structures was beyond me. The landing pad they'd hastily constructed for our arrival was comically small, barely large enough for our shuttle. I had to duck to avoid taking out their welcoming committee with my head crest. And what a welcoming committee it was. 3 humans stood waiting for us, looking about as threatening as a bowl of Andromedan pudding. 2 males in matching dark suits that did nothing to hide their scrawny frames, and 1 female who couldn't have been more than 5.5 feet tall. She wore something called jeans and a shirt that read Brooklyn's finest in faded letters. The female stepped forward as we disembarked. "You must be the Galactic Compliance Authority representatives. I'm Maya Torres, Earth's official liaison for First Contact Protocols." Maya Torres. The name meant nothing to me then, but by the stars I'll never forget it now. Zar immediately went into diplomatic mode, his translator crackling with formal phrases and ceremonial greetings. Meanwhile, I sized up our opposition. The 2 males were clearly nervous, sweat beading on their foreheads despite the cool temperature. Standard fear response. Good, but the female Maya, she just stood there, relaxed. Casual. Like she was waiting for a bus rather than meeting representatives of a galactic superpower. Her dark eyes held no fear, no awe, no proper respect for the authority I represented. If anything, she looked slightly bored. "So," she said, interrupting Zar's flowery introduction, "you're here to tell us we're expanding too fast and need to slow down, right?" "Got it. Anything else?" I felt my jaw drop. In all my years of enforcement, no one had ever been so dismissive. Even the most hardened criminals showed some degree of respect for the process. This tiny human was treating us like door-to-door salesmen. Zar's translator made a series of confused beeps before he managed to respond. "Well, yes, that is essentially correct. However, there are protocols to follow, agreements to sign, territorial boundaries to establish." Uh-huh. Maya pulled out a small device and started tapping at it with her thumb. "Look, I've got a dentist appointment in an hour, so can we speed this up? You want us to play nice with our neighbors? We'll play nice. Done. Where do I sign? This was all wrong. Where was the posturing? The negotiation? The gradual escalation of threats that would eventually lead to their inevitable submission? I cleared my throat, a sound that usually made hardened space pirates reconsider their life choices. Perhaps I rumbled, my voice carrying the authority of 1,000 successful intimidations. You fail to understand the gravity of this situation, little human. Maya looked up from her device, one eyebrow raised. Little human? Seriously? What are you, 12? 12? I had no idea what that meant in human terms, but her tone suggested it wasn't complimentary. I am Vrex'thul, Enforcer First Class of the Galactic Compliance Authority. I have brought entire civilizations to their knees with a word. Your species would be wise to show proper respect. Okay, Vrex. She pronounced my name wrong, dropping half the syllables. Here's the thing. I've been dealing with tough guys my whole life. Grew up in Brooklyn, worked as a bouncer in Queens, spent 5 years as a cop in Manhattan. You want to know what I learned? The louder they talk, the softer they punch. The audacity. I expanded my chest to its full impressive width, my war clubs clanking against my ceremonial armor. You dare to compare me to your primitive local enforcers? I am a warrior born of the void, tempered in the fires of 100 conflicts. Yeah, void warrior, 100 conflicts. Got it. Maya glanced at her device again. Look, Vrex, I'm sure you're very scary to whatever species you usually push around, but this isn't going to work on humans. We're kind of immune to the whole big scary alien thing. Immune? I stepped closer, towering over her diminutive form. We shall see about that. She didn't step back. Didn't even blink, just looked up at me with those dark eyes and said, "Try me." Something cold crawled up my spine. This wasn't how these encounters were supposed to go. The human should have been cowering by now, begging for mercy, offering tribute. Instead, she was challenging me. Kletzar sensed the tension and quickly intervened. Perhaps we should move to a more formal setting? The conference room we requested? One of the human males finally spoke up. Of course. Right this way. The conference room was as primitive as everything else on this world. A simple table, chairs that looked like they'd collapse under my weight, and walls covered in something called drywall that I could probably punch through without trying. Maya took a seat at the head of the table, gesturing for us to sit wherever we wanted. I chose the chair directly across from her, making sure to loom as much as possible. Standard intimidation tactics. She responded by leaning back in her chair and putting her feet up on the table. So, she said, let's get down to business. You represent some kind of galactic government, right? And you're here because humanity has started expanding beyond our solar system? The Galactic Compliance Authority maintains order across 17 sectors. Kletzar began, but Maya cut him off with a wave. Save the speech, Klet. I read the file. You guys have been running protection rackets on developing species for about 3,000 years. Pay up, stay small, and maybe we won't blow up your planet. Standard mob tactics with a sci-fi twist. I slammed my fist on the table, cracking the surface. You will show respect, human. The authority brings peace and stability to the galaxy. Peace and stability. Maya looked amused. Right. And the mafia brings order to the neighborhood. Same business model. Different scale. How dare you? I rose from my chair, my full height casting a shadow over the entire table. I should crush you where you sit for such insolence. Should, could, would, might. Maya examined her fingernails with exaggerated interest. You know what I notice about guys like you? Lots of threats. Very little follow-through. All bark, no bite. That did it. 3 millennia of successful intimidation, and this microscopic human was treating me like a joke. I reached for my war clubs, the ceremonial weapons that had broken the will of countless species. Vrex'thul. Kletzar's voice was sharp with panic. Protocol strictly forbids violence during first contact negotiations. Protocol can burn in the void. I snarled, hefting my clubs. This creature needs to learn proper respect for her betters. Maya finally took her feet off the table and sat up straight. For a moment, I thought I'd finally gotten through to her. Then she smiled. And something about that expression made my blood freeze. "Betters," she said quietly. "Oh, honey, you have no idea what you just stepped in." She stood up, and I realized she was even smaller than I'd initially thought. Maybe 5 feet 4 inches at most. A child by the standards of any reasonable species. But as she moved around the table toward me, every instinct I'd developed over my long career as an enforcer started screaming danger signals. "See, Vrex, there's something your intelligence reports probably didn't mention about humans." She was close enough now that I could smell something sharp and metallic about her, like heated metal and old blood. "We're not from a nice planet. Earth isn't some peaceful garden world where the worst thing you might encounter is a cranky herbivore." I backed up a step, my war clubs suddenly feeling inadequate in my hands. What are you talking about?" "Oh, just the fact that our world has been trying to kill us for about 4 million years. Maya's smile widened, showing teeth that seemed far too sharp for a herbivore. "We've got predators that make your average void beast look like a house pet, weather systems that can level cities, diseases that can wipe out entire continents. And do you know what happened to the species that survived all that?" Another step back. My legs hit the chair I'd been sitting in. The briefing said. The briefing was wrong. Maya was within arm's reach now, and I could see something in her eyes that I'd never encountered before. It's not fear, not respect, but something far more dangerous: recognition. These. She was looking at me the same way I looked at my prey. See, humans didn't survive by being the biggest or the strongest or the scariest. We survived by being the most stubborn, violent, and absolutely batshit crazy species our planet ever produced. I swung my war club at her head. It was a reflexive motion, born of pure panic rather than any tactical thinking. These weapons had shattered the skulls of warriors twice my size. They should have turned this tiny human into paste. Maya caught the club in her bare hand, not deflected it, not dodged it. Caught it mid-swing, like it was a thrown ball instead of a 200-pound weapon moving at crushing velocity. "Nice try," she said conversationally, "but you're telegraphing your moves like a drunk rookie. Also, terrible form. You're putting all your strength into the swing and none into the recovery. Leaves you wide open for a counterattack." She demonstrated by driving her free hand into my solar plexus with enough force to lift me off my feet. I crashed into the wall behind me, gasping for breath, my war club clattering to the floor. "Maya," one of the human males called out. "The protocols clearly state that violence during negotiations is—" "Shut up, Henderson," Maya said without taking her eyes off me. "This stopped being a negotiation the moment Captain Intimidation here decided to threaten us with his little sticks." I struggled to my feet, reaching for my second war club. This couldn't be happening. I was Vrex'thul the Bone Crusher. I'd fought void sharks with my bare hands. I'd single-handedly subdued an entire Krellian battle crew. I would not be humiliated by some tiny primate from a backwater world. "You think you can defeat me, human?" I snarled, hefting my remaining weapon. "I have broken warriors 10 times your size, and I've arrested guys twice yours on a Tuesday night in downtown Brooklyn." Maya replied, "Size doesn't mean much when you don't know how to use it." I charged at her, roaring with fury, my war club raised high. This time I wouldn't give her a chance to grab it. This time I'd show her what real power looked like. Maya sidestepped my charge so casually it looked like she was avoiding a puddle. My momentum carried me past her, and I felt her hand grab the back of my neck as I went by. What happened next defied every law of physics I thought I understood. This human, who couldn't have weighed more than 150 pounds, somehow used my own charging momentum to pivot me around and slam me face first into the conference table. The impact shattered the furniture and sent a shock wave through my entire body. I tried to push myself up, but Maya's hand was still on my neck, holding me down with impossible strength. "You know what your problem is, Vrex?" she said. her voice perfectly calm despite having just manhandled a warrior 3 times her size. "You're used to fighting civilized beings, species that evolved on nice, safe worlds where cooperation was the key to survival. You threaten them, they back down. Everyone goes home happy." She increased the pressure on my neck, and I felt my cervical vertebrae starting to creak under the strain. "But humans? We evolved in hell. We're the thing that made our own planet's predators go extinct. We're the species that looked at the most dangerous creatures in our world and said, yeah, we can domesticate those. We're the idiots who saw an active volcano and thought, perfect place to build a city." "Please," I gasped, my voice muffled by the remains of the table. "The Authority, they'll send fleets, entire armadas." "Let them come," Maya said, and there was something in her voice that made my blood turn to ice. "We'll be waiting." She released her grip on my neck, and I collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. My war clubs lay scattered around me, useless as decorations. My armor was cracked, my pride was shattered, and for the first time in my life I understood what it meant to be afraid. Maya walked back to her chair and sat down, straightening her shirt as if nothing had happened. "Now then," she said pleasantly, "let's talk about those territorial agreements. I'm thinking we take a nice chunk of the outer rim, maybe establish a few colonies in the neutral zones. What do you think, Clet?" The Zilani diplomat was pressed against the far wall, his normally blue skin gone pale with shock. But the protocols." "Forget the protocols," Maya said. "We're writing new ones. And the first rule is simple. Earth goes where it wants, when it wants, and anyone who has a problem with that is welcome to file a complaint." She smiled that terrifying smile again, in person. As I lay there on the floor, surrounded by the wreckage of my reputation and my understanding of the universe, I realized something that would haunt me for the rest of my days. The intelligence reports had been wrong about humans in every possible way. They weren't weak. They weren't primitive. They weren't fragile. They were apex predators from a world that specialized in producing apex predators, and we had just invited them to the galactic neighborhood. The worst part. This was just the beginning. The medical bay aboard our diplomatic vessel was not designed for someone of my size to be curled up in the fetal position, whimpering. Yet here I was, 3 days after what I'd started calling the Maya incident, still unable to sleep without seeing those dark eyes staring back at me with predatory amusement. Dr. Yithmar, our ship's medic, had declared me physically unharmed but psychologically compromised. What a delicate way to say I'd been broken like a cheap toy by a creature half my size. The worst part. Every time I closed my eyes, I could hear her voice. "Let them come. We'll be waiting." Clet Zar had been sending increasingly frantic reports to Authority Command, each one more hysterical than the last. "Urgent reassessment required." He'd written in his latest transmission, "Human species demonstrates capabilities far exceeding initial projections. Recommend immediate withdrawal and reclassification to priority red threat level." The response had been predictably bureaucratic, negative, mission parameters unchanged. Establish compliance or face disciplinary action. I wanted to laugh. Disciplinary action? They could court-martial me, strip me of rank, throw me in a detention cell for the rest of my natural life. None of it would be worse than facing Maya Torres again. But orders were orders, and 3 days later we were back on Earth's surface, this time with reinforcements. Command had sent Thokvar, a Brutarian shock trooper whose idea of diplomacy involved plasma cannons and orbital bombardment threats. If I was the hammer, Thokvar was the entire construction crew. The meeting location had changed too. Instead of that primitive conference room, we were directed to something called Madison Square Garden. The humans claimed it was a neutral venue suitable for larger gatherings. I should have known they were up to something. The arena was packed. Thousands of humans filled the seats, all watching us with the same unsettling combination of curiosity and amusement I'd seen in Maya's eyes. It felt less like a diplomatic meeting and more like, well, like we were the entertainment. Maya was waiting for us in the center of the arena floor. But she wasn't alone. Standing beside her were 5 other humans, each one radiating the same casual confidence that had nearly gotten me killed 3 days ago. They looked like they'd stepped out of different worlds entirely. There was Jackson Mills, a mountain of a man who made even Thok-Var look small. His dark skin was marked with scars that spoke of countless battles, and his eyes held the weary patience of someone who'd seen too much violence. Maya introduced him as former Special Forces, current pain management specialist. Next to him stood Lisa Park, a woman whose slight frame and gentle smile were completely at odds with the way she moved. Every step was calculated, every gesture controlled. Mixed martial arts champion, Maya explained, also teaches kindergarten on weekends. The third human was Tommy Kowalski, a stocky man with calloused hands and the kind of grin that suggested he enjoyed his work far too much. Demolitions expert, Maya said. Retired from the Marines, now works construction, loves blowing things up. Then there was Sarah Williams, a tall woman with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice. She stood perfectly still, hands clasped behind her back, watching us with the intensity of a predator sizing up prey. Sniper, Maya said simply. Holds the record for longest confirmed kill at 3,000 meters. The last human was Alex Rivera, younger than the others, with the lean build of a runner and nervous energy that made him bounce slightly on his feet. Pilot, Maya explained. Flew combat missions over Afghanistan. It can thread a needle with a fighter jet at Mach 2. Thok-Var stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the assembled humans. This is your response to our authority, he rumbled. 5 primitives and their pet diplomat. Maya's smile could have frozen plasma. Pet diplomat? Oh, Thok, you're going to be fun. The Brutarian's forearms spread wide, each one capable of crushing a shuttlecraft. I am Thok-Var, Shock Trooper Prime of the Galactic Compliance Authority. I have leveled cities and turned entire star systems to ash. Your pathetic world will submit, or I will personally oversee its destruction. Wow, said Jackson Mills, his voice carrying the lazy drawl of someone commenting on the weather. That's a lot of words for... I'm compensating for something. The crowd erupted in laughter. Actual laughter. Here we were, representing the most powerful military force in the galaxy, and these creatures were treating us like a comedy show. Thok-Var's skin flushed the deep purple that indicated extreme rage. You dare mock me? I will tear you apart with my bare hands. Get in line, said Lisa Park, still smiling that kindergarten teacher smile. Though I should warn you, the last guy who tried that is still in therapy. She glanced at me, and I felt my recently healed ribs ache in sympathy. The crowd noticed and laughed harder. Tommy Kowalski stepped forward, pulling something from his pocket. It looked like a small metal cylinder, no bigger than my thumb. Hey, big guy, he called out to Thok-Var. You know what this is? The Brutarian squinted at the device. Some primitive explosive? Your weapons cannot harm me, insect. Not an explosive, Tommy said cheerfully. It's a detonator. You see that nice big ship you landed in? The one that's probably your ride home? Yeah, about that. He pressed a button on the device. Even from inside the arena, we could hear the distant rumble of an explosion. Through the arena's windows, I could see smoke rising from the landing pad. Oops, Tommy said, not looking sorry at all. Guess you're stuck here for a while. Hope you brought snacks. Thok-Var roared and charged. 4,000 pounds of alien muscle and rage moving at full speed, all 4 arms extended, claws gleaming. He covered the distance to the humans in 3 massive strides. Sarah Williams moved. I'd seen combat footage from 100 different species, witnessed battles that spanned star systems, but I'd never seen anything like what happened next. Sarah simply stepped to the side, drew a sidearm I hadn't even noticed she was carrying, and fired 3 shots in the space of a heartbeat. The first shot hit Thok-Var's leading knee, sending him stumbling. The second took out his other leg. The third, fired while he was falling, struck him directly in the center of his chest plate. Thok-Var crashed to the arena floor like a falling building, his armor smoking from the impact points. He tried to rise, but his legs wouldn't support him. The shots hadn't been lethal, But they'd been precisely placed to disable without killing. Standard police protocol, Sarah said, holstering her weapon. Neutralize the threat. Minimize casualties. Though I'll admit, it's been a while since I've had to deal with a target this big. The crowd went wild. They were cheering, applauding, like they'd just witnessed the most amazing entertainment. And in a way, I suppose they had. Maya walked over to where Thokvar was struggling to breathe. "Let me guess," she said. "Shock trooper training focuses on intimidation and overwhelming force. Lots of roaring, flexing, threats about destroying planets. Am I close?" Thokvar glared at her with 4 eyes full of hate. You cannot. The Authority will." "The Authority will what?" Maya knelt down beside him, her voice dropping to a conversational level. "Send more ships? Bigger ships? An entire fleet, maybe?" She paused, letting the words sink in. "You know what happened the last time someone tried to invade Earth with a fleet?" She stood up and addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet the Galactic Compliance Authority. According to their records, they're the most feared military force in known space. They've conquered 17 sectors, subjugated hundreds of species, and maintained galactic peace for 3,000 years. The crowd booed. Actually booed. Like we were the villains in some primitive entertainment program. "But here's the thing they didn't know about humans," Maya continued. "We've been fighting each other for our entire history. We've perfected warfare to an art form. We've created weapons that can end civilizations, developed tactics that can turn any battlefield into a killing field, and produced warriors who considered dying for their cause the highest honor." She gestured to her companions. "These 5 people represent maybe 1% of Earth's military capability. 1%. And they just neutralized your best enforcement team without breaking a sweat." Alex Rivera stepped forward, his nervous energy now focused into sharp attention. "You want to know what our real military looks like? We've got nuclear submarines that can stay underwater for months, stealth aircraft that can cross continents undetected, satellites that can read a license plate from orbit, and that's just the conventional stuff. Don't forget the fun toys," Tommy added with that disturbing grin. "Cluster bombs, thermobaric weapons, railguns, directed energy systems. Oh, and my personal favorite, tactical nuclear weapons small enough to fit in a backpack." Lisa Park was stretching, like she was preparing for a workout, "and that's just the equipment. You want to know about the people? We've got special forces units that can infiltrate any target, eliminate any threat, and disappear like ghosts. We've got pilots who can fly in conditions that would kill most species. We've got soldiers who consider a 15-mile march in full gear a warm-up exercise." Jackson Mills crossed his arms, his scarred face thoughtful. "You know what's really funny? You guys have been playing Galactic Cop for 3,000 years, keeping everyone in line through fear and intimidation. But you've never actually faced a real military. You've been bullying civilians. And now you've picked a fight with a species that's been preparing for war since before we discovered fire," Sarah added. "Every human child learns about strategy from chess and video games. Every teenager knows how to shoot, how to fight, how to survive. Every adult has access to weapons and tactics that would make your best soldiers weep." Maya walked back to the center of the arena, addressing not just us but the crowd and, I suspected, whatever recording devices were documenting this encounter. "The Galactic Compliance Authority operates on a simple principle: submit or be destroyed. Well, here's humanity's response to that ultimatum." She turned to face Kletzar and me directly. "We don't submit. We don't negotiate from a position of weakness. We don't back down from threats. You want to destroy our world? Try it. You want to send fleets against us? Bring them. You want to test humanity's resolve?" Her smile was no longer amused. It was predatory. "We've been waiting our whole history for a fight worthy of our attention. Thank you for finally giving us one." The crowd was on its feet now, chanting something I couldn't quite make out. But the meaning was clear enough: defiance, challenge, and the kind of absolute confidence that only came from a species that had clawed its way to the top of the food chain. Kletzar was trying to fade into the background, his diplomatic immunity suddenly feeling very thin. I didn't blame him. 3 days ago, I thought I understood the universe. Now I realized I'd been living in a child's fantasy where the biggest, loudest monster always won. So here's what's going to happen, Maya continued, her voice carrying clearly through the arena's sound system. We're going to expand into the galaxy exactly as we planned. We're going to establish colonies, build trade routes, and explore new worlds. And if anyone has a problem with that, they can discuss it with us directly. She gestured to the disabled Thokvar. Your friend here will be returned to your ship once our engineers finish studying its technology. Consider it a professional courtesy. The next time you visit Earth, you'll find us much better prepared for company. Tommy Kowalski held up another detonator. Speaking of which, did I mention we've been reverse engineering your faster-than-light drives? Amazing what you can learn from a ship that's been helpfully disabled. We should have our own fleet ready for field testing within the year. A fleet designed specifically for hunting down and destroying Galactic Compliance Authority vessels, Alex added helpfully. Nothing personal, just business. The implications hit me like a physical blow. They weren't just refusing to submit, they were preparing to fight back. And if what they demonstrated here was any indication of their actual capabilities, this meeting is concluded, Maya announced. Gentlemen, you're free to leave whenever you can arrange transport. But before you go, I want you to take a message back to your superiors. She walked over to where I was still cowering and knelt down so we were at eye level. Tell them that Earth remembers every threat, every insult, every attempt at intimidation. Tell them that we're coming, and we're bringing friends. Tell them that the age of galactic bullying is over. She stood up and addressed the crowd one final time. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the former Galactic Compliance Authority. Thank you for your time, and remember, humanity doesn't negotiate with terrorists. The crowd's roar was deafening. As I watched thousands of these impossible creatures celebrate their defiance of the most powerful force in the galaxy, I realized that everything was about to change. The Authority's 3,000-year reign of terror was ending, and it was ending because we'd made the mistake of threatening a species that had spent 4 million years learning how to fight. 6 months later, the first human warships appeared in Authority space. They called themselves the Terran Defense Force, and their opening message was simple. This is Earth. We're here to negotiate. The negotiations lasted about as long as my fight with Maya Torres. Today I work as a cultural consultant for the new Terran government, helping them understand the species they're gradually liberating from Authority control. It's honest work, and it beats getting my spine realigned every few months. Sometimes, late at night, I still wake up in a cold sweat, remembering Maya's smile and the sound of the crowd chanting for war. But then I remember that I'm on the winning side now, and I sleep a little easier. After all, there's nowhere safer in the galaxy than under the protection of a species that grew up in hell and learned to call it home. The humans had a saying, if you can't beat them, join them. I'd learned a better one. If you can't beat them, and they're offering you a job, take it and thank whatever gods are listening that you survived the interview. Maya Torres had been right about one thing. Humanity was definitely immune to the whole big scary alien routine. What she hadn't mentioned was that they'd perfected the art of being the big scary aliens themselves. And frankly, the galaxy was a much more interesting place with them in charge.